This video is going to explain how to install your TB88cc race head kit onto your motor. You'll only need basic tools, sockets, combination wrenches, screwdrivers, pliers, things like that. You might need a couple special tools if you don't have them already. Torque wrench and a set of feeler gauges, 002 and 003. Expendables, you'll need oil and assembly lube. If you don't have assembly lube, you can just use oil. And feeler gauges. Alright, now before you take your motor apart, make sure that the engine is cold. First step is to pull the top end. Once you have your top end off, right there, that's the hole that you drill to 1.5 or 2 millimeters for your high volume oil pump. Only drill it if you have the high volume oil pump. So now we're ready to install the piston. Install one clip onto one side of the piston. You might want to use some assembly lube on the piston pin, just so everything is nice and easy on startup. Go ahead and install the piston. Put the pin until it's just not sticking out. Slide it in the studs carefully. Make sure that the side with the high end marking is up. And slide the pin on in through the small end of the connecting rod. And then install your other piston pin. Another thing I forgot to say, make sure you stuff a rag behind the piston so when you're installing those piston pins, if one of them falls out, flies off, it'll fall into your engine because you'll be splitting cases trying to get it out. Once you got all your rings evenly spaced out, get ready to install your cylinder. So here's what the cylinder looks like from TB. Make sure there's nothing in the bore, wipe it all down before you install it. So maybe get like a cap full of motor oil. Dip your finger in there and wipe it around the bottom edge of the cylinder so that when the piston comes in, the first thing it does is coat itself in oil. Don't forget this little O-ring for the oil return passage. Now we're ready to install the cylinder. Slide it right on over those studs and carefully compress the rings. Alright, so once you got your cylinder on, make sure you don't forget to put the cam chain through. Now we install the cam chain roller. It's this thing here, along with this little bolt here. Might want to use a bit of assembly lube on here. That was probably too much actually. Oh well. I can line that up by hand. Just slip that in there. Finger tight for now. Now we install the head gasket. Your head gasket will look like will be a metal paper gasket. I'm using a high compression gasket, so yours will differ a little bit. And install the centering dowels. On the lower right and upper left. And the little O-ring goes over the lower left stud. And your O-ring here. Now we're ready to install the cam into the head. Make sure you have your rockers in. Slide the cam right on in there. Install this, the cam sprocket onto here. Make sure that the motor is at top dead center and just set this up as close as you can to where it looks like it will be right. Save you trouble later. And then you slide this over the head studs. Make sure your O-rings are in place. checking your O-rings until you got the cylinder head firmly on. Okay. Once you're at this point, get your centering dowel for the cam sprocket, flat screwdriver, and just line up those two holes so you can slip that dowel in. Alright, now check your timing marks. Make sure that it's at top dead center here and that the circle and the notch in the head line up perfectly. Now I happen to guess just perfect because I've done this a few times, so T mark, notch in the case, and the circle mark with the notch in the head all line up perfect. And then you just want to reach through the other side or in here. Actually, you could probably just rotate the motor. Rotate the motor so all that lines up. Install your cam sprocket bolts, finger tight. Until they're seated. Now we're going to install the rocker cover on top of the head. Make sure that the arrow is pointing down. So you get your rocker cover gasket out of your huge bag of gaskets, if you can ever find it. There it is, right there on top. So rocker cover on. The copper one. Make sure that your copper washer goes on the lower left stud, because that's the one that holds the oil pressure. Okay, you can get your 3 acorn nuts and your 1 normal nut. See, you got your 3 acorn nuts right here, and then 1 normal nut. The acorn nuts go on the top ones, and the bottom left ones. And then the normal nut goes on the lower right. And that's, just tighten those up finger tight. Now I'm going to install the cylinder and the cylinder head anchor bolts. The Honda ones are just 10mm bolts with Phillips also. They slide in there and there. Finger tighten them now. Finger tighten. Once you've found your right head cover, your right head cover gasket, stick it on there. This is reversible, it really doesn't matter. Go ahead and put these bolts in, finger tight as you guessed. Make sure you tighten up those bolts on the cam sprocket. If you don't do that, well, it's pretty messed up for your motor. I forgot to do it once, and these came loose and they broke and shit all over the motor. Don't do that. Alright, so before you put this cover on, torque those down to 10 foot-pounds and torque these down to 10 foot-pounds. Once you got your valves adjusted, O-rings on there on your tappet covers, and finger tighten them. Once everything is torqued in place, almost everything is 10 foot-pounds by the way, you can install your exhaust studs. The threads are shorter on one side. The short side goes into the head, and just install those as far as you can by hand. And then what you want to do is get just 2 nuts, and then you'll tighten them against each other. And then you'll be able to tighten the stud into the head, like that. Now you just unbolt these 2 things from each other, and then you got your stud in there.